Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to talk about Omanyala. Yes, Ferdinand Omanyala, Africa's fastest man. I was interested in his story, so I started digging in data and information. And the first thing that struck me was on the race that he won, or actually didn't win, where he was crowned Africa's fastest man. He was number 2. That was the Cape Kano Classic in Nairobi. And I think Tracy Bromell was number 1. And I was like, okay, this is, we still have to celebrate him, although he was number 2. And he just beat Frankie Fredericks, who was from Namibia, I believe. He was the fastest man in that. And in it for the past decade, the 100 meters has been dominated by Nigerians. So now we have meme material to fight Nigerians on Twitter when the Kenya versus Nigeria brawl comes up on Twitter. But that aside, so to figure out whether how big is Omanyala, or small, or are we overhyping him, or is it just at the right hype that it is, I went to the IAAF website. So this is the body that is responsible for organizing all major athletics competitions in the world, apart from Olympics. And they keep meticulous records of all the races by all the major athletes, their rankings, their times, and all that. So very nice data. So when I got into the website and went for 100 meters, Ferdinand Omanyala was number 5. Which sounds great until you understand how the formula is calculated. So in the IAAF, there's a French guy who created a table of how to rank athletes based off their running time and the position for that. So the combination of the two makes up a ranking, and this is across all athletic races. So for all your races that have been accredited by the IAAF, you take that formula, punch in 8, and you then get a ranking. So at number 5, since this is an average number, average means that sometimes you're a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower. So for Omanyala to be at number 5, which means certain races he's below 5, certain races he's actually above 5. Then now take that ranking and take all the top 10 100-meter athletes and put them in one race. That means that if these 10 people race more times, Omanyala on average will come out number 5. So he won't be on the top 3 list. So what actually happens is that if you take any particular race, these top 10 athletes don't participate in all races. Because you have to manage your career, you have to manage your training, you choose only the races that are either attractive to you from a money perspective, growing your career, or some other use that you have for that. So in the races where you're missing one of the top 3s or the top 5s, Omanyala will become number 1 or number 2 for that. So if you take a global race, it becomes extremely hard for Omanyala to become number 1. So why is this the case? We'll go back to 2 things. His makeup, his body makeup, and his running style. Now, if you observe Omanyala, he's top heavy. And there's a commentator who said that he's built more of like a boxer rather than an athlete. A very good comparison is between Asafa Powell and Usain Bolt. In the race where they raced together, Asafa Powell is more built, Usain Bolt is more streamlined with that. Asafa Powell almost never won any race against Bolt. He only won the races where Bolt was not racing, but though he's also a world champion in his own right. So then if you look at his running style, he has more power, if we call it so. So he runs with more vigor. Usain Bolt runs more smoothly. Like that. If you watch the takeoff of Asafa Powell and Bolt, you would see Asafa Powell tends to vibrate a bit before he lands in. And that's how Omanyala runs. If you watch his races, in the first few seconds, he tends to vibrate a lot. It's like the old Bedford lorry, where you put the switch on and then the engine starts rattling a bit, and then after some minute it settles into sudden oscillation, and then it runs smoothly. So when is he still vibrating, he's losing minutes, he's losing traction. And you can see from his races, the first few races is always at the back or with the pack, and then he tends to overtake everyone and then end up at number 2, number 3, or the first race for that.
Good start from the big men in the middle. Ferdinand Omanyala trying to stay relaxed, he's under pressure, but he's not showing it at all.
So in order for him to win, he has to reduce his vibration. And how do you do that? Perhaps getting more streamlined. And his coach needs to figure out how to make a winner out of someone who's stout and built, just like Michael Tyson. Tyson was never built like the other world champion boxers, but his coach had to find the left hook, which he used to knock out everyone with. So there also needs to be a formula or a way of running for Omanyala to win for that. So he missed out on the previous Olympics. So how can Omanyala win his next Olympics? A very good example is look at Kipchoge. If you look at his entire career of running, he never started out with the marathon. Actually ran 10,000 meters. I think he did 5,000 indoors. And in those races, he's always a number 2, a number 3 for that. Until he finally figured out that marathon is where it's good. His running tempo kicks in very well in longer races than shorter races for that. So if you consider his entire athletics career, it's actually not successful in terms of winning the races. But if you compare his past, let's say 5 to 10 years, he's like the most successful career. For you to be considered a successful athlete, you have to bring back the Olympic gold. That's the epitome of almost all athletes. Even if they're not paid for those races, they'd rather win a gold in the Olympics. And Omanyala has not done that yet. So I'm not saying he's a bad athlete. He's not just done it yet. Till next time, cheers.
Omanyala really powerful, but Letsile Taboga's had a good start. Akin Blake as well. Johan Blake also going well. Also coming through is Lindsay as well. But in the end, 9.90. Omanyala's been given it 9.92.
So, Omanyala finally won. Finally, Omanyala wins a Diamond League race. But there's still a caveat. It's because all the other bests were not in the race. Yeah? It's not that Omanyala is not great. We're still waiting for him to prove himself when all other top athletes are there. When he does that, we're going to have a part 2 for this video.